Hi Tom, yeah, I saw a friend in the street last week, this odd guy that I once used to know. He comes bumbling up to me and he goes, Andy, have you heard? I said, what? Have I heard what? And he goes, the game's gone. It's gone, mate. It's bloody well gone. And at first, it just bemused me. I didn't have a clue what this guy was talking about. And then I thought, oh, he means football. He means that the game has gone, that we've lost it, that some part of the pure core it represented is now sat in the dustbin. And I thought, wait a minute, haven't we spoken about that before? Aren't there two prophets that deal in this? Yes, there are.
Well, I think, Andy, we can't verify if the game has gone until it's gone to VAR. I think we're going to have a VAR review on that. Let me just quickly go over to the monitor and check. I need to see every possible angle, every single frame by frame, slowed down, zoomed in, every angle and scrutinized, and just see. Yeah, okay, I'm just looking now. Okay, yeah. VAR decision. Game has gone.
The game has gone. Well, there you go, listeners. You heard it here first. You can consider this episode something of a VAR review on VAR. That's right. We're calling it. We're going guns blazing. We're going knives out.
Show VAR the red card. Only after a VAR review, though.
That's the question, though, isn't it? Would VAR conclude to send itself off?
Serious foul play, in my opinion. So I think there's straight red. There's only one thing it can do. I think VAR is... it came in a few years ago. I don't like it.
I don't like it.
I'm going to be perfectly honest. I know it's a debate that has raged on long before it even came in, and it will continue and does continue. I have a few issues with it. I think, first of all, it really does sort of suck the enjoyment out of the game. Particularly, look, we haven't, as Man United fans, it's not like we've had many goals to celebrate this. But I always think when you do score now, I'm always a bit hesitant to celebrate. Because in the back of my mind, I'm just sort of thinking, well, VAR will look at it. Was there an offside? Was there a foul in the build-up, etc., etc.? It's only really some sort of direct goals, free kicks, penalties, where you can sort of pretty safely assume that it's going to stand. So these days, I'm always sort of a bit, you just can't really fully celebrate anymore. I think that joy, that's what you kind of live for with football. Is those, because it's quite a low scoring game traditionally. It's not like sort of basketball where there's like points being scored every couple of minutes. Actually celebrating a goal is sort of a big thing, and sort of that's where the main enjoyment comes from football, is the goals and celebrating the goals. And VAR has managed to really suck that joy out. It's just not fun. It just plants these seeds of doubt in your mind. You see it with player celebrations as well. I feel like they're a bit more muted now. Sometimes players know that at the back of their mind, it's like, well, it's just a bit embarrassing, isn't it, to go over the top and celebrate. A rare VAR moment I did enjoy was when Manchester City played Tottenham in the Champions League quarter-final. Man City thought they'd won it right at the end. Pep Guardiola was running down the touchline. They were celebrating so hard, and it got ruled out. And then it's just embarrassing. You just look like a bum.
It feels like a false pretense, doesn't it? I think there's an element of it's jeopardized everything. Everything that was so sure and clearly defined in previous eras and remits of football is now all just under this cloud of uncertainty. A lot of people don't really know where they stand anymore in conjunction with VAR or with how, because obviously the way that the game is refereed and officiated has now been altered because VAR is the driving seat. So you hear about where they change rules, don't they? They've changed offsides with handballs, probably one of the most noticeable ones, what actually does count as a handball. And there's so many nuances to it now, aren't there, where, for example, it can hit an attacking player's arm if he isn't the one that directly scores from, but if it hits your arm and then goes in, so you've directly benefited from it touching your arm, then it doesn't count. Like you say, yeah, your team scores a goal and you just genuinely don't know. There's something horrific about I think the emotional recoil that it's caused there, because it's a release and a massive relief, isn't it? That moment, that goal, it could be the only moment in a match that you do score. And a goal means something. It means everything to some people. It is obviously the marker of success or failure for your team. For that now to live under this constant remit of scrutiny and feel like, for a large part, never even mind the teams actually playing, but fans feel like it's almost not theirs anymore. VAR is this bridge that's been forcibly planted between you and your team, between the game. Nothing is straightforward or simple, which is the ultimate irony, because that's exactly what the intention of VAR was. When it was first implemented, video assistant referee, the idea being that referees were getting calls wrong and people were being frustrated by, rightly so, it is frustrating, isn't it? If your player has been fouled, quite obviously it's a clear foul and you don't get the free kick. Well, there's a code of logic that the game runs by and that goes against it. So the idea being, with the implement of being able to, just pause the game for a moment, watch this incident back in a replay, we will get to a more absolute truth. So there'll be less of that frustration and the game will be more honest or earnest. Yet actually, as we are here now, it's become a million times more controversial.
Well, that's just it. It was designed to simplify decisions the referees were getting wrong. All it's done is create more confusion. It's created more controversy. There's nary a week that goes by where there isn't some sort of VAR controversy. It's to an extent, it's just basically just replaced the old bad decisions, really. It's just now they take longer and we have cameras for it.
It's far more disruptive to the game. Football is, obviously, I spoke about the emotional release, when a goal goes in, for fans, for players, for everyone involved. But it's just the same before VAR. Referee gets a decision wrong, the game runs on, and that emotion, that sort of charged emotion that's come from the wrongdoing, the incident, sort of runs with you. And in some cases, a team can feel aggrieved, like, we should have had a penalty there. The referee's not given us that penalty. There's something wrong or against us here as a team. And that can actually act to rally you as a team. And I think a lot of people did feed off that. It's maybe a slight tangent, but do you remember the classic Wayne Rooney goal? Was it against Newcastle in 2006, where he was really pissed off at the ref? I think he'd not had a decision, or there'd been a few things, players been chomping at him or something. There was a long ball upfield, Newcastle player sort of near the edge of his box, headed it just up into the air, and Rooney just volleys it. And it was a perfect embodiment of frustration. It was almost like he scored that goal to tell the referee how annoyed he was. Whereas there's so many moments now where it's so disrupted, it takes a long time to get to the decision. Sometimes you'll see when you're watching a game at home or on television, for example, and they're showing you, the VAR process, and they're just replaying the same frames over and over, and it can take a matter of minutes. That does actually have such a detrimental effect on the flow of a match, and it acts to slow it all down so much, and again just chips away at the immersion, I think, that you do want to foster as a fan. You want to get lost in the game. Yeah, sure, you will feel sometimes you'll have your team will win and it'll be euphoric, it'll be great. Sometimes you'll lose and it'll be really dejective, but I think there was a greater degree of honesty to things before VAR. Every referee's going to make a mistake because they're human. Teams spend insane amounts of money on players. You've got a multi-million-pound striker who has scored 30 goals this year. Ball comes in, a keeper makes a mistake, something like that. He's got an open goal and he misses from 2 yards out. And you just think, how is that possible? Because he's a human, because these mistakes happen. Yeah, sure, it is frustrating. It's easier to live with. There's something quite humble and wholesome about it. When you've just sat through 4 minutes of torment and they're still no closer to the right decision, or still get a decision wrong. I don't know how you comprehend that. It just leaves people with this unspent vat of frustration and feeling like the game has gone.
One thing it's done is it's taken away that kind of purity of the game. Error is part of not just football, but it's part of life. You can't eradicate error from every single thing. The great irony of VAR is that it's not really effectively eradicated errors. Statistically, I know the referees try and sort of put out these things saying, "Oh, you know, with VAR's corrected all these decisions and stuff. It maybe has slightly improved a couple of things, but I think overall, I don't think the benefits are that tangible to see. I don't think it really justifies, the minutes of waiting around, the sucking of the enjoyment out of the game. Technology isn't inherently bad when used in sports, because that was always a bit of an argument, wasn't it? It's like, oh, they have this in cricket, they have this in tennis and rugby. Sports that are a bit more stop-start. Football is about the flow of the game, and those are pretty much clear decisions. Like in tennis, the ball's it's either in or out. I mean, it was the same in cricket. It's either hit the wickets, or I don't know what they use. I fucking hate cricket. I'm going to be honest. Fuck cricket. Football's just a different sport. Goal line technology was one I think we could all get on board with.
Yeah, it's a yes or no.
It's instant as well. So that was fine. Offside's an interesting one because again, I feel like even something like offside, which should be you're either on or you're off, right? There's no, in theory at least, there shouldn't be any ambiguity. But, with the semi-automated offside, you have people being given offside by, a toe's length. And you kind of wonder to yourself, well, what kind of advantage is the attacker getting from being offside by the length of their toe? None really, and you kind of have to think, well, we want to see goals. It almost feels like the VAR's mission is to rule out goals a lot of the time, which is like the fundamental thing about football is that you want to see goals, and VAR takes its job to be ruling out what I think a lot of the time just seem perfectly valid goals. I feel like VAR really came about because, there was this narrative that refereeing was getting worse. I kind of always thought that maybe punditry was just scrutinizing refereeing decisions way more. They were just looking at every single decision. And it's easy to criticize decisions when you can slow it down. You can look at all these different angles in real time. Football's a very quick game. Referees have to make split decisions. They're going to make mistakes. People accept that. But punditry really just got into the referees. And now referees are sort of being integrated into punditry, which I find really abhorrent. We had Mark Clattenburg on Amazon. I was watching one of the games on Amazon, and Mark Clattenburg sort of comes in with his little they're effectively just mouthpieces for the referees. It's just sort of referee propaganda. And then they have Ref Watch, don't they, on a Monday now, like after the weekend, where they literally an entire show dedicated to looking at all the controversial refereeing decisions. And they have Dermot Gallagher. They have old fucking Dermot on, who basically just defends referees as much as he can. I don't think he's particularly impartial. But now, yeah, you've even got an entire show that's literally dedicated to looking at bad refereeing decisions, and a lot of those will involve VAR, naturally. And then you just think, well, why didn't VAR get involved? Why did VAR get involved? It's the consistency as well, isn't it? That's what people have always gone on about. It's VAR is not consistently applied. You see times where referees have been called over to the monitor for what, in my opinion, aren't clear and obvious errors, which is allegedly the threshold for telling a referee to look at the monitor. Then other times you think there's some howlers and they've just sort of let play go on, and it's like, where's the consistency? Where is it? It ain't there. Much like the game, it is gone.
It's a bit of a fallacy as well, though, because you know for a fact when the referee is being sent over to look at the monitor. So, incident has happened, VAR have reviewed it, then they recommend to the referee to go and they're going to show him the replay then on pitch side. You know for a fact when he goes over to look at that it's an overturn of decision. It's very rare that you see the ref go to the pitch side monitor, but then stick with their on-field decision. And I wonder if actually VAR is going to be far more detrimental to the quality and state of refereeing than it is helpful, because it breeds a level of insecurity that a referee has not had before. A referee has always been the authority figure on the pitch. And I think with an organised game of sports, you do need that. You've got to have the set of rules. They do have to be upheld because that's how you maintain a degree of fairness. Obviously, the idea being that the referees maybe made a mistake and VAR is there to correct it. But it's about how that happens. And the way that it does happen at the moment is it's like the referee is just. There's loads of times where maybe they've not blown or given a decision because in the back of their mind, they think, well, VAR is going to look at this anyway. A glaring example, as of the time of recording this, we're just a few days following the last game of the season. Man United miraculously somehow actually won a match. They beat Aston Villa, which I did not see happening at all. But there was huge controversy there, wasn't there? Because Villa player stole the ball from the goalkeeper, scored a goal. The referee had blown just after the player stole the ball from the keeper. The rule is that if the referee has blown, VAR can't get involved. It was a shocking mistake. The goalkeeper, it was just a howler, wasn't it? He was nowhere near the ball, and the goal should have stood. So naturally, the team feel quite aggrieved by that. But the referee then, on the back of, so he thought he's done the right thing and he's blown when he's seen something wrong. Well, actually, the resulting inquest on the back of that will be telling him, well, no, you should not have blown. So, I think as much as fans, players, coaches, everyone involved on the team side of things feels more unsure about where they stand with everything because of VAR, I feel like referees do as well. And that to me is just an obvious disconnection of it, because surely they should be working together, that the VAR is there to assist the referee, not to undermine them, not as competing forces. And with linesmen as well, where they've been criticised sometimes for flagging too early, so then the play can't play out and VAR could look at the whole incident. But equally, there's been other times where the linesman hasn't flagged when it's an obvious offside for that reason, and then maybe a player's gotten injured in the resulting play. And you think, well, it was an obvious offside. Why have you not done it? So when you talk about the consistency, I think that's a real issue. That how can referees and linesmen and officials perform consistently when they're operating under such a lack of clarity? I wonder as well, my question to you, do you think that referees want VAR? And I don't mean in like the utopian sense of what it could be, because I do still think there's a general agreement amongst football fans that VAR could be a good thing, or we should have some version of it, but that the version that we have now or have had so far has just not been fit for purpose. So if you were a referee, would you want VAR? Do you think that referees are in support of it?
That's an interesting question. I think it really depends potentially on the referee. I think if you are perhaps not the most confident referee, if you're just starting out, maybe it would be nice to have that that assistance that it should be, that kind of safety net, if you will. Probably the more experienced referees, maybe they feel a bit like they're being undermined. Unfortunately, now referees do sort of gain a bit of a reputation, don't they? I guess in the Premier League, allegedly, Michael Oliver is always sort of touted as the most experienced, the kind of senior referee, isn't he? And he's been in the game for a long time. And I wonder if the referees sort of feel a bit like, well, it's a kind of, they're being called out, aren't they? It's like, oh, mate, you got that wrong. and then they have to kind of admit it. So I don't know if there might be a degree of embarrassment
Yeah.
if you've made a bit of a howler, and then you've got 40,000-50,000 people in the stadium, who knows how many more viewing on TV. You basically got to admit, well, yeah, I was wrong, my bad, got that wrong. So if in that situation, referees might detest VAR because it's basically telling them they've fucked up pretty much, and then they have to swallow their pride a bit. But interestingly, it's also, I wonder if it does sort of plant seeds of doubt in their mind. There was former referee David Coote, who not incorrectly called Jurgen Klopp a cunt, but is now gone, and went oddly with the Kevin Spacey defense and came out as gay after all the controversy, which bold move, fair enough. I don't think it clearly hasn't worked. And there was a game against West Ham this season. I don't know if you remember, it was actually Ten Hag's final game for Man United. VAR recommended a potential penalty right at the end of the game. I don't believe for a minute that David Coote believed that was a penalty. He spent about a good minute looking at the replays, which is not clear and obvious, in my opinion. I think if it's clear and obvious, a referee should be able to go over to the monitor, look maybe once or twice at the replay, and be okay, that's a penalty, fair enough. If you've got to look for a good minute, you've got to look at the replay 10, 15 times, that does not scream clear and obvious to me. He gave the penalty because I think because it was also Michael Oliver was on the VAR that day. And so it maybe creates these power dynamics as well because he is a senior referee. So the lower referees think, well, if my boss is saying it's potentially a penalty, then how can I disagree with my boss? Even though he might be thinking, actually, it's probably not a penalty. And it wasn't a penalty. It was not a penalty. No one agreed with it. I don't even think any West Ham fan could earnestly say that it was a penalty. It was a really poor decision. It kind of maybe exposes a bit almost that hierarchy of referees, because now we see which referees have the real power within the kind of referee pyramid. Michael Oliver, if he's on the VAR, if he's called you over to the monitor and you disagree with him, are you going to feel Mikey's wrath? The politics of refereeing has kind of been exacerbated because you've now got your more senior referees questioning your decision in real time. Maybe to answer your question, I would argue probably overall no. I'd probably say a lot of referees feel it undermines them, it makes them look bad if they do get decisions wrong, and it probably does plant seeds of doubt in their minds, particularly when a more senior referee has said to look at the monitor. I would have respected David Coote a lot more if he just stuck to his guns on that one. I think he caved in, and it made him look really bad. And then lo and behold, that video of him leaks.
Yeah.
Don't know who leaks that.
You are a little bit damned if you do, damned if you don't, though, as a referee in that situation, aren't you? Because if you stick with your decision, it's almost saying, no, VAR is wrong. And that's quite a strong statement for a referee to make. And the whole impetus for them is to integrate VAR, isn't it? Another thing for me is it is almost a different level of officiating now. You mentioned about the clear and obvious thing. That's the principle, isn't it? Overturn errors when they are clear and obvious. But every single time you see when they broadcast or show the VAR screens that they're seeing as well, and they slow everything down so much that it is almost a different incident. Pretty much every incident looks worse or more malicious in slow motion. There's been times where you've seen a player they've gone in for a slide tackle, they've lost the footing, like the standing foot has slid. So then they have collided with another player, and it is accidental. By definition, it literally is accidental. But you watch it on the slow-mo, and it almost looks worse each time, doesn't it? It almost looks like their stud goes further into someone's shin or knee or whatever it might be. It's a straight red card, and it's a dangerous play offence, when actually it wasn't really that at all. It's an unfortunate collision. It's a hazard of the game. You're gonna slip on turf. It's really stripped away at a lot of the common sense that is very innate to football. Like there's times, aren't there, where your player gets fouled, and because there's a chance to gain an advantage over an opposition, you feel like they should be punished. That maybe yellow, or red card, whatever. There's tactical advantage, but the common sense part of you knows that it's not really that bad, or we got away with one of those a moment ago. But there's so many moments like that now, and just as much as a goal being scored and then actually, oh no, that wasn't a goal, and the handicap of cheering and the emotional aspect and the flow of the game. The same that incident where a player gets sent off, that changes the entire dynamic of a match, and teams can be really hard done by for really what is quite an innocent mistake turned into a malicious attack. Here's another question for you on the notion of VAR. Do you think that it was genuinely brought in with honest intention, or do you think that Sky Sports found a great new way to dilute the product and amp up the dramatization, and it's all just a ploy? It's as much of this world is these days. It's designed to break. It's a purposefully faulty system because, as you say, there are now ref watch programs. There's always a couple of hours of debate and analysis after a match. You've got programs like Gary Neville's Overlap, online based content. What VAR has done in some ways has fueled greater and more consistent conversation because there are more talking points. It's literally manufactured more points to talk about.
Well, if we go back to the very first Games Gone episode that we did about the dramatization of football, it's great drama. I remember like that first season that VAR came in, I think it was 2018, 18-19, I'm pretty sure was the first season, and we played PSG in the quarterfinal, and we got a penalty right at the end, and it was a handball, and
Oh,
it was
like
one of
8 minutes.
those.
Yeah.
It was one of those sort of technically yes, it's hit his arm, but it was never a penalty. Obviously, as a United fan, I didn't care, but the sort of drama around that. I even remember the commentator, he was like, "Oh my word, VAR! It's got involved. It's this new aspect of the game now, isn't it? It's this whole new entity that we have, and it's just another layer of drama, is what it is. It's another layer of talking point, of debate. I mean, the simple fact that even we're talking about it now just shows what VAR has done. It's completely changed like the landscape of the game at the elite level. Of course, they don't have it in the lower leagues,
Mm.
in the Championship and League One, and strangely, they don't have it in the sort of early rounds of the FA Cup, and then they bring it in at around round 6, the quarters, something like that, which is I think personally, if you're not going to have it throughout the competition, don't have it at all, in my opinion. And actually, I remember it's quite fun, isn't it, to watch those FA Cup games or those League Cup games where VAR is not there, and then you can just enjoy it almost. The goal goes in, the flag's not gone up, and it's kind of like, oh, I remember what this feels like. I remember what it's like to celebrate a goal and not have to worry about the all-seeing eye of VAR being like, no, 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 slow your horses down there, buddy. Harry Maguire's toe was in an offside position and potentially blocking the goalkeeper's line of vision, or some bullshit like that. I mean, it's what VAR has done now. It's a whole new beast to deal with. It's given people more to debate. It's created more controversy, and that is like I said earlier, the great irony of something that was designed to simplify the game to an extent, to eradicate those big errors, has just put more scrutiny on those errors. I think it's actually made referees sort of more insecure about their decision making, both in real time and even when they look at the monitor. I'm sure there's still an element of insecurity there. It's very clinical, isn't it? It's removing that common sense, and you're breaking down the game into like you're thinking inside the box to an extent, and you're just breaking it down into rules and procedure. and it takes away that kind of beauty, that kind of spontaneity and
Yeah.
flow of football. And in my opinion, I think VAR is one of like the worst things of the modern game. I really do just detest it. The thing is, I don't think it's going anywhere. That's the big issue. But then again, I wonder if it's. Do you think it's a sort of problem exclusive to the Premier League, or because I feel like at national tournaments, it's maybe not quite as controversial. Do you think we're just really bad here in England at applying it?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. But maybe the issue is there, though, the density of football. So Premier League, the 38 game season. So there's matches every week, sometimes twice a week. There's a lot more potential instances to be highlighted and to for news to be made about. Whereas international football is more often shorter burst, isn't it? The World Cup, for example, feels like a long time when it is on, but the actual amount of football that happens is a lot less. There must be something to the way that it's implemented in that regard, and I'd be interested to know the differences there. VAR's modus operandi is buried in a technicality, and not even considering. It's a little bit like a large accusation of the running or the downfall of a lot of top level football clubs is that people buy them that don't know, or have people in the top positions that don't know anything about football. You've got businessmen running football clubs, so they're not able to make decisions that are grounded in actually furthering things on the pitch. There are the same accusations with VAR that a lot of people operating the VAR, not necessarily the ex-referees that are overseeing it or consultants or something like that, but the actual guys analysing the footage. They're going by technicality, and it's almost football by numbers rather than letting this game, this Goliath of a thing, breathe. That's actually wild, isn't it, to think that it's been in place now for that long and yet it's still so problematic, and further leads the conspiratorial side of me to question the intentions of it. Was it ever actually brought in to eradicate wrong decisions, or is it always going to be faulty?
Well, I think Maurizio Pochettino once said, "I trust the car, but I just don't trust the driver," was his kind
Yeah,
of
that's a good way of
analogy
putting it.
for
Yeah,
VAR. Yeah, I think it is sort of widely agreed that in theory, in principle, VAR can be this good thing if it's applied properly, if it doesn't dominate the game. I've always sort of maybe advocated for a potential NFL style kind of you basically get three challenges. You can sort of challenge a decision. Maybe even not even three, maybe that might be excessive, but like you get two challenges per game where you can force the referees to look at a decision. Because in that sense, I think that would put less pressure on the referees as well, because it's only, say, that the manager or the team that wants you to do that rather than a fellow referee.
one of the biggest examples for me with the fallacy of VAR, simulation, diving. That's been such a commonplace part of the game for so long. And in the era of VAR, you would think that's just such an easy thing to stamp out. Any instance that there's suspected simulation, well, yeah, obviously you review it. I mean, there's lots of times they are reviewed anyway, because if someone's simulating, they're trying to win a foul, a free kick, a penalty, whatever. So it's being looked at. If it's obvious that the player has dived, just an instant yellow card. Yet it's never really been the priority of VAR. The element for me that it's just part of this culture of misuse that we largely have incurred with technology. How much technology that is prevalent in modern day society that we do just misuse. We have so many technological solutions to assist us in everyday aspects of our lives, even just the internet, how potentially world advancing that is, and yet it just gets boiled down to creating memes and Club Penguin. VAR it typifies that a little bit in the remit of football.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's symptomatic of our reliance on technology for everything. That kind of erosion of the human spirit almost through technology. I mean, I was reading one story yesterday about I've discussed self checkouts before on the
Mm,
Jeremiad podcast about my frustration with them, particularly in Lidl. But Tesco have now basically introduced these sort of big cameras at the self checkouts, which if you don't scan an item properly, it will say you didn't scan that properly and it will show you an instant replay of you failing to properly scan the item. It's basically, we have now VAR at the self checkouts. People naturally have just been like, what the fuck is this? Tesco have said it's basically to combat shoplifting, which is
of
on the
course.
rise. And, people do kind of cheat the system a bit at the self checkouts. It's like, oh, I've got a big bag of cashew nuts. I'm just going to put those through as peanuts instead, which are cheaper brand of nuts. Or it's like, I've got of certain expensive fruit that you're just going to weigh in as like bananas or something like that. It's like people do that. I understand that like they need to try and crack down on shoplifting, but that's just a step too far. It's invasive. It's what are they doing with these videos after? Is that replay kept? Is that stored? Is that data somewhere? Did Tesco have like their little center in Stockwell with like Tesco senior managers on the earpiece to the there's always like that one or
Yeah.
two people at the self checkouts to kind of monitor it. They're like, oh mate, you might want to look at that one again. Potential foul play at till 7. Are we going to see the Tesco staff brandishing yellow and red cards to people now at the tills? If it's an innocent mistake, you might get a yellow, but if they think it's intentional, are you going to get a staff member wandering over right in front of everyone and give you a red card, send you off? That would actually be quite funny. I think if they're going to do that, they might as well at least embrace it. And they give them a little whistle, show people yellow and reds at the checkout. Because some people need it. Based on the behavior I've seen, I'd like to brandish a few red cards at the self checkouts, but this does feel like a step too far.
It does. It's itemizing every aspect of life. The more that we rely on technology or technology gets thrust into life, the greater this disconnection between humanity widens. We talk about dystopia. That's what VAR represents. There is a societal mirror on the it's a reliance on technology, but a reliance that we also still are kind of skeptical of. The self-checkouts, what frustrates me about that, they get more and more till space in supermarkets is taken up by self-checkouts. They're supposed to be quicker, more efficient, streamlined for both the consumer and the shop. Obviously, the shop then they employ less staff because you have less people on tills, but you still have to have a person there supervising the self-checkout 24/7. You still encounter so many issues where it doesn't work properly. It just for no reason throws up a fault, or like the scales are wrong. So every item that you scan, someone has to come over and approve that that is the item you said it is anyway. It really does beg the question of what's the point?
It also just serves to worsen social interactions. If the self checkout does work as intended, you can just go into a supermarket, not speak to a soul, pay for your goods, and then leave. Whereas before you might have had a little chat on the till with whoever was scanning your items, just like a
Yeah.
little "how's it going? Been busy? Have you tried these before? Would recommend." When does your shift end? That kind of just inane small talk that might not seem like much, but I think it's those little interactions, those little bits of humanity that you
Mm.
have that is now being eroded by things like VAR and technology in everyday life. We're having basically what does it mean to be human anymore? I think is being sort of increasingly brought into question now with technology. It's just in every aspect now. One thing that really annoys me is how many things now require you to like download some sort of app.
Ugh.
You know,
Yeah.
you want to just book a table at a restaurant or something. You've got to download this booking app. I bought some headphones recently. In order to actually use them with my phone, I had to like download the Bose app to sync it up. Why do I need an app just to use a pair of headphones? Why do I need an app to book a fucking table at a restaurant? Why do I need an app to pay for my parking? Technology in theory should sort of make things simpler, right? But I actually think in lots of respects it's just complicated things, because like you need apps for this, and then not only do you need an app, you then need to create an account. You've got to like sign up, and then you have to consent to or not to the terms and conditions and the marketing things. It's like, good grief, I just want to pay for my parking. Now all of a sudden I'm downloading this fucking app, trying to figure this out, worrying that I'm going to get penalized. And it's all right for people like you and me, because we're young, we understand this. But I reckon for older people, it must just be so difficult when you've just nowadays, for all these things, you've got to try and download an app.
For us that grew up in an increasingly digital era, and I think for younger generations, because it has always just been there, it's just the way things are. Maybe it's harder to see like the idiocy of this obstacle course of hoops that we're always having to jump through now. Whereas, for older generations, it must just feel like insanity. Everything's been buried in dilution and technicality. These companies tell you that it's more efficient to download the app and do it this way. And sure, it's probably more efficient for them. I wonder, on any person's given phone, how many apps they have that they've used once, for example, because you just had to for this simple purpose. And it's all very throwaway and just leaves you with a bad taste.
I went to a gig on Sunday night to see my favourite DJ, No Format. A great gig. I had to download the Resident Advisor app to get the QR code to the ticket, but that's a bit annoying, but whatever, I'll do it. And then usually back in the day, you just hand over your ID, they'd give you a little once over and they give it back to you. Now they had this big machine, right? It was ridiculous, and it had a camera on it. It was filming me, and then she took my ID, she took my driver's license, and then scanned it on this machine. I said to the woman, I was like, this is a bit invasive, isn't it? And she was like, oh, we just have to do this in case like you did something, And I said, like, do you keep this? Like, what do you do with this data? She assured me they get rid of it. I'm not sure I believe her. How did people cope back in the day? Like, do your job properly. Now you're relying on technology to track me down. I mean, it's insane. Never seen anything like this before. I just wanted to go see a DJ, but I've had to download a fucking app for it. I've then had to have my license scanned by some machine, all whilst this machine is filming me. I did think at the time, this is where technology is it's getting a bit much. Call me a Luddite, but I just kind of wanted to get a baseball bat. Rage against the machine, literally, you just want to smash it, don't you?
So you've needed technological approval to be able to enter into and engage with the human experience.
It makes me angry. It makes me compelled to lament what VAR and technology has done to us in Jeremiad form.
Let him have it.
Checking potential serious foul play. Decision: VAR is a bum. Jog to the monitor while they monitor and scrutinize every minor detail, frame by frame, stop, start, stop, stopping the game. Have they no shame? And who do we blame? Did we judge too harshly? Did we overanalyze? Did we pause, rewind, slow down, and zoom in too zealously, quibbling over the minutiae of the green grass? The soul of the game has been sufficiently sucked into the wires and screens. Moments of joy are now stifled by anxious thoughts of what if. Celebrations are rendered null. Good times are wiped out. Songs and chants are halted in their flow, the all-seeing eye watching from every angle. Its infallibility dare not be questioned. Errors judged by those who are destined to err. Our every move watched and stalked, downloaded, stored and archived for so-called protection, checked out at the self-checkouts, our faults laid bare for instant replays and dissection, technological seeds of doubt planted into our minds. The machines are on the bench waiting to sub in, to come on and show the boss their worth, to shunt us onto the
sidelines until it's machine versus machine, and man is nothing but a helpless spectator.
I mean, that's a straight red card if I've ever heard one. 3-game ban
Damn
possibly.
straight. I think that's a full season ban. That's an Eric Cantona kung fu kick to a Crystal Palace fan level ban.